Hello everybody, I am Peppino back for more Kerbal Space Program Conquering the Solar System. This is episode 7, and as you can probably tell by the title, today we are setting down our Munar power plant at our main moon base. Uh, Communication has been a bit fuzzy with the guys up at the moon base, so we are sending them a power plant and communications tower, um, which is easier said than done. But also, this is going to take a bunch more crew members to work down at the base. Uh, so the first thing we got to do is send our moon bus back from our Munar station to the Jeb Kerman space station, which is in orbit around Kerbin. So, after a couple maneuvers and burns, we gotta get docked to the Jeb Kerman space station. And like I said before, this moon bus is going to be something we frequently use to move Kerbals around, just because it's pretty darn efficient. So there we go. We got a nice, close enough intersect, and we are getting close to it here. And we try bring it down a bit, but we're good enough for my liking. So we are just going to burn towards the target, which will bring our encounter down a bunch. And after a couple minor adjustments, we are going fairly close to the space station. So right there, and it was almost really close. Like, when I said very close, I meant very, very close, like collision course close. Luckily, I was able to realize that quick enough to slow ourselves down before we destroyed our space station, because that would not have been a good thing. Um, so, narrowly avoiding disaster, we are able to dock the moon bus to the Jeb Kerman space station, finally using all those docking ports that we added to the top there. And we can finally use up the rest of the fuel in these things and decouple them. I don't really know what you call them, but we finally use up all that fuel and we get rid of that so that it's hopefully a little more stable, but not so much. It's pretty darn wobbly, uh, which we may need to do something about that as well. I don't know. But either way, we'll figure it out later. Now, here is our Munar power plant and communications tower. We are launching it now, and we have Orad, Gerloff, and Aldzi Kerman. More clones, or maybe it was just a popular baby name that year for the Kerbals. I don't know. Who knows? But either way, we have those three again. We're getting a lot of the same names on this save file, but that's okay. It doesn't actually really matter too much. So, these three are going to pilot this power plant and communications tower to the lunar surface, and also this has living quarters for a bunch more Kerbals. So, we are going to bring an entire busload of Kerbals, and that will bring the total eventually up to 10, I believe, that we are going to land with this one landing. So, this is a very dangerous mission, because not only do we have 10 lives aboard, that if we crash, it would be catastrophic, and the greatest disaster that this space program has seen in 40 some episodes. Um, this is probably the most difficult landing we've ever had as well. This isn't a very stable uh, landing mechanism, which you'll see later on. But it was the best I could come up with at the time. Um, which basically we've got 4 towers around the main tower that we're gonna land with, and then decouple and hope they don't tip us over. It's a very, very delicate process, and could probably have been done a bit better, but I don't know. We'll just have to hope it works at this point. Not much else we can do. So we get our nice Munar encounter and warp until we're there. And we don't need to dock this, luckily, with anything yet. There's no actual docking ports on the tower because it was complex enough already, and so that could lead to some problems later transferring the crew, which you'll see. But right now, we're just getting our nice orbit around the moon and trying to circularize it somewhat. And there we go. And we want to get an orbit that brings us right above the moon base so that we don't have to do too much extra work once we are trying to land, because it's going to be difficult enough. So there we go. There's our power plant and communication tower there. But now we are selecting the crew members who will board the moon bus and head over to from the space station to the Munar power plant. Luckily, we have a large amount of Kerbals living on our space station, and Bill Kerman is going to be the commander of the moon base. We are sending him down there. He is the most senior member, so he will be the first in command, with Luke Kerman, who was the first on the moon, being his second in command over at the moon base. And then a bunch of random Kerbals who we have had doing experiments on our space station will now change to doing experiments on the moon. But as you can see, this is very, very wobbly. Every time I dock a Kerbal, it gets more wobbly, and I have to time warp to get the wobbling to stop, which isn't exactly accurate. It's sort of cheating, but whatever. We can deal with it. That's the only way that we're going to get it done without it shaking itself apart, which I'm sort of surprised it didn't after seeing how wobbly it was there. But luckily, it stayed intact. So now we have to get ready for the burn to the moon, and this is a cool little flyby of our space station. I realize that we're going to have to do a burn. We almost hit it once coming into dock last episode. Or was that last episode or this episode? Oh my god, I'm losing track of everything. But either way, we almost hit it once when we first brought the moon bus in. I think that was this episode. Yeah, it was. But now I realize, okay, we're not going to hit it this time, so we can do a cool little flyby and get some nice footage of our moon bus flying by the Jeb Kerman space station en route to the moon. The crew can all wave goodbye, where they have been living for God knows how long. We kind of just leave these guys up in orbit, more than we probably should. But either way, there is moonrise, which means that we are burning at the correct time for a nice encounter. Now, as we get our encounter, if you remember back, I said there's no docking ports on the power plant or communication tower, whichever you want to call it, and that's going to lead to some difficulties. We are going to have to just get somewhat close to it, and then do EVAs with our Kerbals, all 7 of them, to get them over into their homes on the power plant, which has the ability to hold, I think, 11 Kerbals. And we are only doing 10 because that's what the moon bus can hold. But alright, now basically all that we have to do is just try get a close encounter down to a few kilometers, within a few kilometers of the power plant. Now, as you can see, this is a cool shot that I didn't really plan, but I saw it, and it was just one of those moments that reminds you how awesome this game is. We have the sun, Kerbin, and the moon all lining up with our moon bus. So, naturally, I had to stop, take a look, realize how cool it was, took a couple screenshots, and then we can move on. But I just thought that was a really cool looking shot there, and now we're back to doing our mission. Um, so we have to bring down our orbit and get nice close encounters, which there you go, 3 kilometers, we can EVA that no problem. It'll just take a little while. And so what we're going to have to do is just wait for our encounter to come around, and there it is, 3.1 kilometers. We're just going to kill off all our velocity relative to the target so that we can EVA as many of these Kerbals as possible, uh, and not drift too far away from the power plant. But there we go. Alright, we're killing off our velocity, and now we begin the long process of the EVAs, which I cut out most of, don't worry. You don't have to watch Kerbals floating through space for, well, you're sort of watching Kerbals floating through space if you're watching this video, that's the main point. But, they're at least doing interesting things right now. You don't have to watch all 7 of them EVA through space. As cool as I think it looks, I'm sure you guys don't want to watch me do it 7 times any more than I wanted to do it 7 times. But you gotta do what you gotta do. So, here we go. And he just EVAs over. We'll speed this up, and then I cut out some of the later ones. But he EVAs over. This is Nelcott Kerman, I believe. And he gets down to about 100 meters away, then coming in down to 50 meters, and you gotta do this very delicately. And now you can sort of see closer what this power plant actually looks like. And it's gonna be really interesting trying to land this thing. It's gonna be tough. But he boards, and then there we go. Next guy off, and we'll just skip to when he's about to board, and so we'll just do this. And as you can see, the Munar transfer ship, which is the technical term for Moonbus, is getting farther away, so I gotta do a little burn to bring it back closer. And so we get it in so we don't have to EVA quite as far. And there we go, perfect. So now we'll just EVA some more and just keep loading these guys in. But as you can see, there's large solar arrays up there, as well as battery packs, some generators, some communication antennas so that they can actually talk to the people back on Kerbin. And then, yeah, we've got living quarters. We've got 2 of the larger living quarters that hold 4 each, as well as the cockpit, so you can house 11 on this thing. And now there is a couple design flaws. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but hopefully as long as we can land it, it's going to be sufficient for doing the job that it needs to do. So, now we're just trying to get maneuvers so that we are right above the moon base where we want to land. And we're going to want to just fly over it directly so that we can just kill then all of our vertical velocity and drop right down. I'm not going to be able to be as picky with where I land this as I was with the other things, because I'm really worried I'm not going to be able to land it at all, to be honest. It's not a stable craft to fly in any way. So, here we go. And we decouple there, and I did remember there is a docking port on it, on the very bottom, but I remembered why I didn't use it now. I didn't want to ditch all of that extra fuel that we had there, because we could use that. I didn't know how much fuel we were going to need for the landing. So there was a docking port, but we didn't want to waste fuel, so I would rather just EVA the guys. It didn't take too long. But alright, now we're on a nice trajectory to come down right next to the arch base there. And as you can see, we deploy the landing legs. And you can see why this is a difficult landing, I'm sure. Just because it's not really a stable thing to try land. And if I don't land on absolutely flat surfaces, it's gonna tip over 100% of the time. It's very, very, very tipsy. Because the landing legs are in the middle, and there's a bunch of weight in the fuel towers on the outside, so it's just not actually a very good lander. But if we can get it down, it's going to be a great communication tower. Uh, it'll beam signals up to the satellite in orbit. I believe that's the Kerbnik 2. And then from there, we'll beam it back to Kerbin at Kerbal Space Center. And so we can have a good communication network with all of our moon bases. So now is the very, very delicate landing, coming in very slowly, down, 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 and we see our shadow coming in, and we're down below 3 meters per second, because I really don't want this to tip over. And we have a little lateral velocity, which we can't really afford to have at all, and it almost tips over, but survives. But that's only half the battle, because now we have to decouple these fuel towers. And so here goes nothing, as we are ready to hit decouple and hope they don't tilt and hit us, which one looks like it's about to, but then it doesn't. The 3 of them fall. There's some minor explosions. Nah, no big deal for the Kerbals. Explosions are not something they worry too much about. It was probably nothing important anyway, is generally the motto. But as you can see, one of the fuel towers is still standing, which leads to Gerloff Kerman, or Gerlorf Kerman, doing one of my favorite things I've ever done in Kerbal Space Program. For whatever reason, just how ridiculous the concept is and what it looks like just makes it one of my favorite moments playing this game. First thing I try to do is push some of this debris out of the way, but it's too heavy for one Kerbal. There will be some debris cleanup to do, but can you see what I'm attempting here with Gerlorf? This is absolutely amazing. He's got to tip over this fuel tower, so here goes nothing. Gerlorf away, and he flies into it, headbutts it, spins off ridiculously, and it tips over and explodes. Perfect. Mission accomplished, as he hops up, a bit dazed from hitting his head on a giant fuel tower and then spinning and hitting his head again on the ground. But Gerlorf managed to do it. We'll clean up the debris later, as he heads over to join his comrades at the main living section of the moon base. Now, many of them will live around here. As you can see, he's still a bit dazed from that hit to the head as he tips over and slides. But, yeah, so many of them will live over here. They can do all their experiments and whatnot, and it will just be terrific. So, there we go. Now, we have a good communications network as well as power, which you will see in a second as we plop Gerlorf down there. We've got tons of debris to clean up, but we can do that later. First things first, we are going to want to take a look at this tower, and there's Bill Kerman, who is going to be the acting commander here at the moon base. And so he's going to go and hop over there by Gerlorf, and he's just taking a look at all the debris, trying to figure out who's going to clean this up, because it's not him, he's a commander. But, anyway, next thing we gotta do, we're gonna extend all of these panels and communication antennas so that we start generating a poop ton of power, which is the actual unit of power that this thing can generate, 1 poop ton per minute. And so we send all these communications antennas out. We have 8 of them, 4 of the long distance and 4 of the shorter distance for backup. and I realized there is actually slightly too many solar panels, possibly. I'm realizing that's maybe a bit of overkill, so we're gonna retract these middle ones and use those for backup panels in case something happens to the first set, uh, which, knowing the Kerbals, it could very easily get knocked off. But anyway, now we gotta do just a little bit of cleanup by getting our moon bus back from the moon over to the Jeb Kerman space station, where it's going to be docked and can refuel and whatnot. And yeah, the nice thing about this is it can make it round trip without having to refuel, so we don't waste any fuel that we have orbiting the moon. We only use up the fuel we have at the Jeb Kerman space station, which we can refuel without too much difficulty. So now just getting an encounter with the station is all we gotta do, and I cut out most of the maneuvering and whatnot as we just are bringing our apoapsis down at this point, which with these nuclear engines can take a little while, but that's okay. What they lack in speed of maneuvering, they make up for in fuel efficiency. So we're going to be using nuclear engines for a lot this series, and especially for a big mission, which the Kerbals have been planning and is going to be in the works coming up very soon. So stay tuned to the series for that, as we have a very large mission going on. But for right now, we just gotta dock this thing and don't destroy the space station, which we almost did. We've had a couple close encounters at high speeds with the space station, but nothing catastrophic so far, so we'd like to keep it that way. And as you can see, we're cutting it a little close on fuel for the moon bus, but it's probably not too bad. Like I said, with these nuclear engines, you can do a lot, and this probably isn't the most fuel efficient design, but I think it looks kind of cool, and it gets the job done. So, bringing it in, just docking it here at the space station, where it will await its next mission. And so here we go, bringing it in slowly but surely here at a good old 1/10 of a meter per second. And there we go. And you can see I'm getting a little better at docking, aren't I? I mean, it helps when there's not tons of lag, but like it's not taking me 10 minutes to dock things anymore, which is good. That's a very good thing for the future of this space program, if we can be more efficient with our docking. But anyway, we're just gonna refuel this. We've still got a good amount of Kerbals living on the space station, and so all of them will remain there to continue their orbital experimentation and whatnot. Well, we've got, I believe it's 15 Kerbals down on the moon at our main moon base, and I think like 3 or 4 others at smaller moon bases. And they're all doing experiments there, so it's very good. And the first communication sent back from the communication tower is this wonderful picture. Greetings from Bill and the whole crew at the Munar Arch base. So there you have it. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.